All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live stream. Hopefully, you can all hear me. Sounds a little echoey and weird. Just getting my setup going. Sorry for being late, folks. I cannot see the chat right now. Huh? All right. How's everybody doing? Happy 2026. I cannot see the chat. Oh, here we go. There we go. Okay, folks. Well, it's Dunskill here. I've got a guitar here. Thanks for tuning in if you're tuning in. Yeah, there's some tones, baby. All right. So you're for live in 2025. If you're live in 2026, put up your hands. Drop me a comment. This particular live stream or LiveScream is all about answering questions that no one asked. So it's really, really about nothing. I'm going to change my audio settings. Hold on one sec, folks. Boom. So thanks, Leanne, for reaching out. I've just been blathering on for about 6 minutes, 30 seconds here without any feedback. So I feel great. Happy 2026. Is it working now? Can someone drop me a line? Let's just play some guitar in the meantime, because I think that's working. Thanks, Leanne. You can hear me now. And we've got 4 people watching. Thank you all for tuning in. Drop me a comment if you got any questions that I haven't been asked. This whole live stream is about questions that no one's asked me. First one I think I spent about 5-6 minutes there blathering about was relic guitars. What's a relic guitar? It's a guitar that looks like it's been aged and played quite a bit, but it's built brand new. Kind of inauthentic in a way. If you think about it, it's a guitar, just like you see over my shoulder there, that Telecaster and then that other Telecaster. They have signs of wear on them that they have signs of wear that are basically unearned. They're artificial signs of wear. And you can look at some of these guitars and like say like a Mike McCready Pearl Jam, Mike McCready from Pearl Jam, his model. They make tens of thousands of these Mike McCready Pearl Jam guitars. So they have to follow a template to get the wear pattern right in a certain way, and they use various techniques to achieve the wear pattern. And in some cases, the wear pattern looks good, and in some cases, it looks cheap or fake. So it all depends on the guitar. So I don't mind a relic guitar. I'm neither for nor against it. That's one of those things. That's just one of my opinions. Okay, if you guys have any questions that you want to drop me in the live chat and the live stream, any opinions you would like to know from me about guitars or music in general, tonight I am playing this wonderful LSL XT4 guitar. Let me know if you guys can hear it. It's pretty nice California style shred, bolt on neck, dual humbucker bolted to the body, pickups bolted to the body type guitar. So it's a lot of fun to play. It's got a nice black sparkly finish. And this guitar reminds me of my earlier guitars that I used to have. Oh, Leanne dropped me a note saying it sounds good. Okay. Oh, thanks, Leanne. Appreciate it. Shout out. So, continuing on with questions, answering questions that no one asked. Dennis, how many guitars do you have? As you can see behind me, I've got a few on the wall here. Last time I counted, I have 21 different instruments. Or is it 22? So I think I have 16 or 17 electric guitars, 4 acoustic guitars, and 1 electric bass. So yeah, I'm at 16 or 17 electrics, like I said, and 4 acoustics and 1 bass. So yeah, it would be 16 electrics in that case, doing the math. What other questions have people asked me that actually that no one has asked me, that I sometimes think about if I were to be ever interviewed? Well, let's see. Dennis, who's your favorite guitar player? Well, I have I don't have a favorite guitar player. Um, I have influential guitar players. Folks, gentlemen that put like a real big hurt on me that got me inspired to play guitar in a certain way. That would be guys like Jimi Hendrix, Jimmy Page, Stevie Ray Vaughan. Even though some of their style and sound doesn't really come out on my playing, um, yeah, their influences. Billy Gibbons is another one. Jeff Beck's another one. Um, some like people ask me, "Oh, were you influenced by guys like Eddie Van Halen and stuff?" And I'm like, "No, not really." Eddie Van Halen was a great guitar player. Don't get me wrong. Got a lot of respect for him and his style and his touch and his feel and everything like that was amazing. But I'm just not an Eddie guy, and I don't know why. Um, to this day, I'm still not an Eddie guy. I think, I don't want to sound like Debbie Downer, but like a lot of his solos to me were just like real, big clusters and bursts of notes that didn't necessarily have a lot of musicality or phrasing to them. So John Bond saying when he wants to grow up and be big and strong, and Eddie rules. Yeah, Eddie does rule. I gotta admit, like Eddie's been a huge influence on other players that I really enjoy, like Nuno Betancourt, for example. But you know, no one ever asked me what I thought about Eddie Van Halen. Eric Clapton's another guy that I'm not huge on. You know, back in his heyday, he played with a lot of fire and a lot of passion. But here's an unpopular opinion. Clapton, and unless he's with Cream, I don't really want to, particularly go out of my way to listen to his music. So there's another question no one asked, and I'll probably burn in, eternal flames of hatred. Um, Guitar hack there's, yeah, mentioning Eddie was a great rhythm player. Absolutely. And, one great thing about Eddie, I'll say to his credit, is that, it was just one guitar. It was just Eddie. I mean, he had a huge sound running the 2 amps, but, with Eddie, he just had such a crazy amount of rhythmic technique that filled up the sound. So he did a lot of that rhythm and lead thing at the same time, and he would jump around. And I think a lot of his orchestration on guitar was just informed by his background in his piano playing. So I give him credit. Just I'm not saying Eddie was overrated. He's probably still underrated. He's up there with all the greats, but just not a huge influence on me. So, and John's saying that Eddie on Mean Streets, yeah, really, a pioneer and inventive in terms of technique, but also a famous bullshitter. Would turn his back on his audiences, and so they wouldn't see what he's playing on the guitar, and would float a bunch of malarkey about what his rig setup was. So that was Eddie. Great, great bloody guitar player and like a real pioneer, but you know. And the hack saying that Nuno's a man in both leads and rhythm. Yeah, just doing both at the same time. Just that chunky rhythm. But like one guitar, like playing the leads and like you hear some bands where just one guitar player, and when the guitar player drops out for a solo, you still feel their presence. So Nuno for me was like that. Billy Gibbons is like that. Um, Frank Marino from Mahogany Rush is like that. There's a few cats that Hendrix obviously that just they jump off to take a lead, but they're just able to create such a huge amount of sound and tone with their guitar that that they make up for the lack of a rhythm player. So John's telling Guitar Hack, my brother, you need a Les Paul with a Floyd Rose and high axis cutaway to the upper frets. Yeah, like a Les Paul Axis. So yeah, you guys can chat amongst yourselves about that, because to me, a Floyd Rose does belong on a Lost Paul. So that's answering a question that, see, John wasn't even asking me yet, another question I've never been asked is, what style of music do I like the most, or what kind of styles of music do I like to play? And the answer is anything except crap, like, you know, country or, well, sorry, country's not crap. I just can't play country. I can't. I'm not very good at country. I've tried to get the rhythm. I'll demonstrate for you guys. Let's see if I can pull something off here. I'm just gonna do a little. Yeah, I can't really do it that well. Like, I don't get the chicken picking thing. It's probably should have tuned this guitar first, but yeah, I country is just something I can't get my handles on. Um, I have a real extremely hard time playing jazz standards. Um, like, I've tried to learn Stella by Starlight and Misty and um, what's that one that goes? I forget what that one's called, but yeah, I really stink at jazz standards. I just don't have the repertoire for it. Kind of my philosophy with songs is, yeah, there we go. John called it for me. Autumn leaves. There, yeah. I kind of only learn songs on a as needed basis. Like, kind of when I practice, again, answering a question that no one asks, like, what do you practice, Dennis? What's your favorite styles of music? Well, I practice stuff not necessarily that I'm good at, but I try to work on my feeling, like on my feel, my phrasing, like just getting the right hand talking. Sorry, that's the right hand. Get the right hand talking with the left hand. Just getting my feel and my phrasing down. Satin Doll Joe Pass is awesome too. One man, one guitar. Yeah, Joe Pass is a master of that, as John here is saying. Um, yeah, you want to see one man, or watch him with, I think it was him and Ella Fitzgerald. Um, you know, that was awesome. Like, talk about like one man playing rhythm, lead, all at the same time. So Joe Pass is a legend. John's saying, talk about the REH videos. I think Joe Pass actually did one. Those are those old VHS cassettes. I don't know if anyone's old enough to remember, but we had VCRs back in the day with VHS cassettes where we used to watch movies on them. And there was a whole series of these REH videos, and there was a couple different brands that were putting out videos by different guitar playing legends. Joe Pass had one. There's a whole bunch put out by a lot of great musicians back in the day. I still have a Yngwie Malmsteen one here, which brings me to another thing that I can't play. It's classical sweep picking stuff. I cannot sweep pick to save my life. Move through arpeggios within a chord progression and play in not so much a jazzy way, but more in the metal way. Like, Densko, why can't you play, metal and stuff like that? It's like, boy, I've tried. I've tried a long, long time. Uh, Hack has mentioned that Paul Gilbert is also great. Yeah, like he's another guy. Back in his Racer X days, he pulled off a couple of those REH videos where you had like this crazy purple Ibanez with like tassels on the neck, and he was in front of a blue screen, and he was just shredding all these licks. Like, let's see if I can nail one of his licks here. So this is like a little exercise lick. So this is a Paul Gilbert practice lick that, like, from one of those REH videos. It's in E major. So I'll play it really slow because I suck at playing it fast. But it goes. Oops. That's, before I get too sloppy, that's probably about as fast as I can play it. But John's asking about Jason Becker. Yep, Jason Becker, Ridiculous Shredder, played in, I believe it was called Cacanaphy with Marty Friedman. Ridiculous Shredder. Unfortunately, the poor guy's got, I think it's, is it Lou Gehrig's disease? ALS, I think. Poor guy can't move or talk. I've watched a documentary on him, but fortunately, he's still able to make music. They hooked him up with a computer that he can actually they can track his eyes and his eye motions. And yeah, John's saying it's Lou Gehrig's ALS. Yeah, so I was right on that one. But yeah, poor guy. Like, he's hospital ridden. There's been numerous benefits for him. He's an example of a guy that was taken too young from. Well, he's still alive. He's still with us, and he's still composing. But like another guy in that arena that I think about Jason Becker every once in a while, but also a guy named Sean Lane. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of him, but that dude was a monster of a shredder and passed away really young. Um, so John's asking if guitar playing has gotten anybody here laid. I'm gonna say, John, hell no. But that is one of the reasons I started to play. Um, and Guitar Hack is mentioning that Jakey Lee is another great. Yeah, and Jakey Lee, highly underrated player. Um, Answering a question that no one asks is like one of my favorite players from like the '80s. I gotta say Jakey Lee has really kind of stepped up. Um, in my personal list of great guitar players. I got to see. I was glad to see he released that Jakey Lee Friedman model amplifier, and got to see some more of his playing, and got to see him out there and doing his thing. So that was pretty cool. Um, Another, just to go back to the previous topic of players that were taken too young from us, is a young lady named Emily Remler, who's a jazz player that was really really phenomenal. That unfortunately succumbed to addictions, I believe, and overdosed. So that's a sad story. So answering Oh, John's asking me. Oh, here's a question. What are my thoughts on carving gear? Because that's because John, I know you got a Steve Vai carving amp. I've never tried anything from Carvin, to be honest, man. I don't know what the amps are like. Don't know what the guitars are like. Carvin's under Kiesel right now, or it's the same company. They just changed brand names. I hear good things about them. Read good things about them. They got a nice custom shop there where you can make your own type of guitar. But never specced one out. Never felt the urge or the need to as of yet. So um, yeah. So Hack is asking Gibson or Fender or PRS. So there's a question that I have actually been asked before, um, and I think uh, the answer is yes. I'll take a Gibson or a Fender or a PRS. I've played fantastic specimens of them all. If I really had to, hold a gun to my head or a knife to my throat kind of situation, I'd probably pick a PRS just because of the like I love out of all the guitars I've owned, like I find PRS to be the most versatile and can kind of meet both middle grounds, so to speak, between Fender and PRS. So I know if I play a Gibson too long, or sorry, between a Gibson and a Fender. I know if I play one brand like a Gibson or a Fender too long, I tend to like want to play one or the other. But yeah, I'd probably stay with PRS. Probably an unpopular opinion, but you know, I've owned quite a few PRS guitars in my experience, and let's say about like 75% of them have just been stellar and amazing. And I own one now. I'm down to back down to one of them, and it's amazing. So answering other questions that no one asked. Um, I often get asked, what is my thoughts? What are my thoughts on using amps versus modeling? Um, I think it's a bloody well dead horse question. Anybody that's watched the channel before will know that I'm an amp guy. I do have a quad cortex, which I'm using right now for this live stream. It's great. It sounds good, but hell, nothing beats an amp. That's it. Like people that have opinions about how modelers are better or more superior, you know, maybe haven't played an amp. Um, there is no replacement for displacement, like moving air. I've played amps my whole life. I've gone through Line 6 devices, all kinds of digital solutions. And like I said, I have a quad cortex now. It's good. It feels all right. Um, Guitar hacks agree with me. Amps always. But you know, why fake it when you can make it? Like, you know, I understand there's a lot of silent stages right now, but I'm not playing. I'm not gigging. I'm not in a band anymore these days. So I mostly use amps for recording, and they're still better. I've got all the amps that I need. I got an abundance of amps. I could probably sell a few and still be okay if I decide to use my quad cortex a little more. You know, in the context of mixes and stuff like that, like it, I do find it hard to tell like the difference between them. It's more probably for a player's, you know, perspective. Um, but you know, I'm calling me a dinosaur or somebody, you know, old man yelling at the clouds, but amps are better, by far. Um, like it's a tangible difference between an intangible experience playing an amp versus playing a modeler. Um, and I, you know, another controversial thing I'll say here, but I think if you can't tell the difference as a player, then you need to practice more. You know, like you need to learn your how to use equipment better. If you don't give a crap, then it's all good. But for me, it makes a difference because I'll explain. There's a synergy that happens between a really loud cranked amp and your guitar pickups, especially when you're gained up a little bit. You know, if you're running your amp a little hotter, you're gonna start to feel a little bit pressure on the guitar and against your playing because it's like, whoa, suddenly the guitar is way more alive. Suddenly I got this feedback and this sustain and like harmonics and transients and you know the feedback and like you just watch a guy like Jeff Beck for example, he'll stand in one corner, or Gary Moore, he'll stand in a corner and he'll get like a harmonic screaming off his fretboard because it's resonating off the amplifier. You can't bloody well do that with a modeler. At least I've never been able to do that. It's not the same thing. So I have a quad cortex because it sounds pretty good, and I use it for a lot of short shrift. Um, John saying I'm talking like Jack Nicholson a little bit. All right. Well, one flew over the cuckoo's nest. Yeah, I know. I do have a bit of a cold, so um, anyway. So that's my thoughts on you know modelers. They can come up with a million different ones of them. You know, Stadium, Helix Stadium twos, and you know, quad cortexes and whatnot, blah, blah, blah. Just give me a bloody a bloody tube amp, you know. And you know, I sound like a hypocrite and a snob because I use digital effects and multi effects all the time. So you might argue that, oh, it does. You're only half analog. Ugh, you're screwing the rest of your mix. Uh, you know, if it sounds good, it is good to me. Like, you know, I haven't found that level of enjoyment playing modelers as I have with playing through amps. It's not the same with pedals. Like, I love my Eventide H90. This year they put out a couple, I think it was 4 new algorithms for free. Some granular effects. They sound amazing. Like, I got them hooked up on my H90, and we're in, you know, we're in Tone Town with the H90. So it's a great device. You know, a bit of a learning curve, but I'm a guy that has an Empress Zoya. So John Hack is saying that modelers are good for home practice. Yeah, they are. They totally are. Especially if you have to practice in a quiet environment, because you know I can only use my amps so much throughout the day. So, and John's saying that he needs a live in-home robot to cook, clean, and change his guitar strings. Yeah, John, don't you have a few guitars with Floyd Roses? That would be an advanced robot right there. But anyway, let me just change some patches here. I just want to. So I hope everybody's doing well this year so far and having a good 2026 here on the second day of it so far. So answering some more questions that no one asks is so Denskill, how did you get your start in music? Um, how did I get kicked off in playing guitar and getting going in it? Well, you know, I was really, I guess my earliest memories of music were um, with my parents traveling in my dad's big old orangey brown Oldsmobile and listening to AM radio and just hearing music that way at first. My family was involved in music. Guitar Hack, my bro, is involved in music. So, at a very young age, I got highly influenced by a lot of um, social social scenes. My neighbors 2 doors down the street from me were musicians, so music was always kind of around. And then I always wanted to kind of play guitar and kind of follow in my hero's footsteps. And the first, when I was I guess 11 years old or 10 years old, I was in grade 6, and I joined the orchestra at school, and I asked around, asked my brother, like, what's the closest instrument to a guitar, and in the orchestra, and it was the bass because the lower four strings are tuned the same way. So I signed up for that, much to the dismay of my parents. Because the thing, bloody double bass in the orchestra was bigger than me, and somehow I had to figure out a way to get this bloody thing home. Anyway, um, from there it was just a progression into, like I was heavily into Led Zeppelin and Kiss, and also hip hop music and whatever my friends were listening to. But I was always a little bit backwards. Like I was into the hip young thing, but I was listening to stuff that was 10 or 12 years out of my scene, like Prince and stuff like that. Um, because I just love music, and I really loved classical as well. So music was always there for me, and I took lessons from my brother. When I first got a guitar, and just got as soon as I hit grade 9, I got into bands right away. And from there, it's been a journey, ever since. So yeah, I've been playing music since I was a little kid, and that answers another question that nobody asked. I hope. if you guys got questions, drop them in the comments there. I see there's a few of you online here. Thank you all for joining tonight. Hopefully everything is sounding and looking clear and good. John's saying, oh, you didn't have reverb starting off. Kids don't know how good they have it now these days. Yeah, like I remember my first equipment that I got, and it's far cry from what you can get these days. I started out with a PV Bandit. No, sorry, PV Rage 58, little uh, solid state volume, solid state. John's asking me to turn up my volume. Let me turn that up a bit. I could also talk louder too. Oh, okay. Thanks, Hack. Yeah, I'm in the dark. I don't have good lighting or anything like that. Anyway, um, what was I talking about? Yeah, my first amp was a PV Rage 58. My first guitar was a PVT 1000, not the Terminator, but that was just the name of the model. And it looked a lot like this guitar here, this LSL XT4. It was maple neck, black, with my PV was HSS. So my first guitar really started off my obsession with HSS Super Strat guitars. So I've always had a thing for those types of guitars. Like probably the first guitar I ever really, really badly wanted was when they put out the Richie Sambora signature from Fender. And man, what a guitar! You know, I'm not a Bon Jovi fan by any means, but that guitar had the spec and the configuration with the HSS and the Floyd Rose on it that I really wanted. So, so yeah. Um, Answering another question that nobody asked. What kind of experience do I have playing live, like in bands? Well, I've been in quite a few different bands over the years. When I was in high school, I started a band with some friends. We did some recordings. After that, I joined another band that was um, some buddies from high school and played with them for a few years. We did a couple small tours and did some shows and did some recordings. Probably my favorite band of all time that I was in was a band I started when I was in university. I wasn't really playing guitar. I auditioned for this band as a turntablist. I don't know if you guys can see behind me, but there's a couple of Techniques 1200 turntables and a scratch mixer back there. So Densko Music doesn't just do guitar. I was into hip hop and turntablism back then, which is the idea of using a turntable as a musical instrument. So you're beat juggling, you're scratching, um, you're using you're sampling here and there if you can. So those are all different ways of using turntables and loops and just catching interesting samples off interesting records to get good sounds. I was really into the Ninja Tunes label back in the day and experimental hip hop and things like that. Tricky and a whole bunch of 2000s late 90s hip hop. So I auditioned for this band as a turntablist, and I picked up the guitar, and eventually got, Burning City was like, well, screw your turntables, we want you on guitar. So that was the start of another, few years of some of my proudest moments playing music. Um, Working the indie scene, playing downtown Toronto, playing a whole bunch of clubs, playing with our friends. It was a lot of fun, and from there I went on to a bunch of other different bands in university. Plans for Larry, Hello Companions, Q19. Man, there's a whole list of them. I was in a Police cover band for about a year and a half. And trust me, learning any summer stuff is no joke. Equipment wise, it wasn't too horrendous for me, but playing and technique wise, I had to learn a lot. So I spent another good amount of time. I started a 90s cover band called the Nine O's, and we did 90s covers before 90s covers became, I guess, retro or cool again. So anyway, so I've played quite a few shows. I haven't played in front of any more than, I think the biggest show I ever played was in front of about 1,200 people one time at a farm complex out in the boonies with one of my bands. I haven't had that many great, incredible rock star moments or anything like that, but it's been a good run. I've done a few charity shows, and I've had a few draws, but that's not really why I do it. So John's got a question here. Have you had gear stolen? Lessons, tips. Hey, Dwight's here too. Hey, buddy. I've never had any gear stolen, but I have had gear borrowed and not returned, which pissed me off. Um, Lessons and tips on getting your gear stolen, as John's asking. I would say lessons will always, pack only what you need for a show. If, that's probably the scenario where most of your gear might get stolen or misplaced, especially open mics or where everyone's just shoving their gear in a corner somewhere and it's like, hey, I've got a Gibson case. I've got a Gibson case. Wait, is this my Gibson case or is this your Gibson case? Oh, I took the wrong Gibson case. Haha. Crap like that can happen. Um, any tips on preventing your gear from getting stolen? Yeah, never let your bloody eyes off the damn stuff. Or just buy cheaper crap that, you don't care if it gets stolen or nicked or, accidentally damaged or whatever. Um, yeah, carry some beater stuff or some backups if you can. I know it's a pain in the ass sometimes, but you don't. Yeah, I'm very knock on wood. I'm very fortunate never to have anything nicked from me, anything stolen. So Dwight, it's good to see you, buddy. Oh, John had left a comment there. Smoking on stage is cool. Change my mind. Yeah, I don't know if we could do that anymore, John. I think those old Keith Richards days are done, brother. Hack's got a good suggestion here. Is at gigs sit in front of the stage during breaks. I think that's a good tip. That way people can see you, talk to you. You can promote the band, sign autographs, pick up chicks, score drugs. No, I'm just kidding. You can do whatever. Happy New Year, Dwight. Happy New Year, brother. Um, yeah, and Happy New Year to everyone that's tuning in tonight. This is my first live stream of 2026. Sorry I got started a little late, folks, but yeah, we're on point now. So, and tonight's live stream is asking questions, answering questions that no one asked. And if you guys have questions, feel free to ask them. And yeah, what was so what was my favorite gear that I got this year? That's again another question that no one's asked me. I'm just looking around. I have no bloody clue to be honest. I didn't really. I mean, I traded for a bunch of gear. I didn't buy a lot of gear in 2025. Hmm. Yeah, I've never had any bum equipment that I bought or traded for. Um. Yeah, nothing really comes up to me. I didn't really acquire much this unless I traded. Oh, actually, sorry, there is one thing that I got. Sold a bunch of equipment, and I picked up, and that was so that I could buy the Chase Bliss Lost and Found pedal. That's a multi-effect pedal from Chase Bliss, and yeah, it's sick. It wasn't cheap, so I sold like I think two pedals for it, and yeah, limited release. I don't know if you could still get it, but if you guys are familiar with Chase Bliss stuff, their pedals, pretty redonkulous, pretty redonkulous. Another question that Nolan has asked me. Um, I had a good one earlier. Actually, my friend asked me. Oh, it's how do I approach learning new tunes? Um, so to learn a new tune, again, I only keep tunes in my memory that I have to play, like if I'm playing them in a recording or if I'm playing them live. So I don't have a huge repertoire of tunes ready baked in my head that I can just pull out. Because unless I'm practicing them or using them all the time, then I tend to lose bits of the arrangements. But what I try to do is start at a top level, is kind of learn kind of the overall shape and arrangement of the song first of all. Try to learn where is it a verse chorus thing, or does it move around? I don't know. From there, I start very high level, and from there, I start to generalize. Okay, what kind of sounds am I gonna need? Like just on a broad, like is it a distorted sound? Is it a clean sound? Is it both? What kind of tones am I gonna need? And then from there, I start going down into the finer details, getting into the weeds of things like, what special tricks or licks or features does this song have that I might need to emulate? So that's when I get into the nitty gritty, and I might look up some YouTube lessons or really sit down with a recording of it and try and break it down by ear. Um, and only like 50-50 when it comes to describing or figuring things out by ear and figuring out how, by actual tabs. Um, so that, I'm okay like with figuring stuff out by ear, but if there's a tab or a lesson out there, I'll check it out. It still might not be right, but it might be halfway better than whatever the hell I figured out. And it all depends on the piece of music. Like I'll give you guys an example. Like if you listen to the song Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, when they go into that kind of weird acoustic part, like I'll pay anybody $1 million to figure out what the heck Tony Iommi is playing in those clean parts, like where it gets all like do 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 do, something like that. Anyway, I don't. So so yeah, I encourage everyone to practice their ear training. I do it all the time, but it's an art. It's you really got to work at it. So Guitar Hack is asking, describe the writing process for original material. Yeah, so it's kind of for me. It usually starts off with a lick or a riff or a sound, like some kind of spark will hit me like a bolt of lightning. I'll be screwing around on the guitar, or in the shower doing something completely innocuous, and I might get a lick or a riff or an idea pop into my head, or I might be sleeping and suddenly I have to pick up a guitar, or get on the keyboards or something like that, or on the bass, and try and get a good idea of the hook or the lead, and then from there I try and build it into an arrangement and to a feel, and I try to imagine what the bass, drums, and guitar are doing, and also keyboards to an extent. Um, if there is any if there's any sort of tonalities or any sounds or any textures that I want to add. Sometimes I get it right from just sounds, like I'll throw on one of my crazy pedal boards with a keyboard sound, and I'll just come up with like a funk riff or a jazz riff based on that, or rarely I'll have like a theoretical idea, like, hey, what if I kind of try to superimpose this chord over this chord progression while doing this kind of rhythm, and it'll be sort of more of an abstract mathematical conception. One of my songs on my channel, on my playlist, is called I Love Trash. And that song was exactly like that. So that came up with, that was based on some sounds and some drum programming and some textures that I came up with. Um, so yeah, I try and work multimodally, with wherever the inspiration strikes. So John's asking, did your brother let you play his guitars growing up, or was it like Step Brothers, Don't Touch My Drum Set? I don't think I was old enough to play my brother's guitars by like, or even think about them. Um, yeah, I don't know. I didn't really approach guitar until I was maybe like 13 or 14, and by then my brother's a lot older than me, so I think he was almost married and moved out of the house by then and taking all his guitars with him. So my first guitar that I ever touched and played on, practiced on, was borrowed from my cousin Rich, and that was in an acoustic that I first started off on. So yeah, and then after that I switched to electric, and here's a question that no one asks: is like, Dennis, do you recommend starting on an acoustic or an electric? Um, I say start on an acoustic. 'Cause if you really want to play guitar and you can get over that fingers hurting your thing, or your fingers hurting thing, then you could probably move on to electric and it won't be too bad for you. If you start on an electric and your fingers are already hurting that bad and it's too hard for you, I'm afraid you're gonna have a hard time learning guitar in general. Unpopular opinion, I know. I'm being salty, but I've I started off on an acoustic, and the action wasn't that great, and I played a lot of acoustics just to try and get my fingers tougher, and it really helped. It paid off. I started off technically I started off playing six-string bass, so it really helped with my dexterity and getting the finger strength up. So it's not for everybody. Like acoustic is I think it's just more satisfying. Like to take an acoustic around, you don't need an amplifier. It's less complicated. You can just pick it up and play. You can travel with it a lot easier. You know, and like John said here, is you bend the strings out of tune starting on electric. Yeah, yeah. Like when you get this finger strength from playing an acoustic, you'll find bending strings and moving around on electric is way easier. Lighter string gauge, thinner necks. It's just a physical thing, right? So, another question that nobody asked. Who is my favorite modern guitar player right now? Or who's the best guy walking the planet, I believe? Um, I'm going to quote Marlon Brando on this one because he said comparisons really suck. Um, comparison is the thief of joy. There's no such thing as the best or the greatest or whatever. Like, there are a lot of folks out there right now that impress me. Guthrie Govan, Matteo Mancuso, Matteo Sasato, even guys that have been around a while, like Andy Timmons, and yeah, Hawk mentioned Guthrie Govan there. But, Nuno Bencourt has been around a long time. The guy still blows my freaking mind. So, I think it's a silly question to ask who's the best or who's the greatest or who's, because it's pointless, man. Like, it's a very North American thing, like to compare, this to that. It's like dancing to architecture. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. So John's asking if I had $500 Canadian to buy one electric guitar to tour around the world with, what would it be? $500, eh? maybe if I could find a cheap Nick Schecter, sorry, Nick Johnston Schecter, like a used one, $500. That's you can still get a good guitar for $500. Something used like anything I could get used like with an HSS. That's kind of my bag. So Guitar Hack saying his favorite is Nuno. Mine probably too. Mine just combines the right amount of technicality and right amount of funk and feel. Really hard to pull get those skills together. Get all those chops together in one boat and play with such fire and I mean, let's face it, he's getting up there, but he's still got the fire, right? So anyway, folks, it's just after 10. I've just been on. La, 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 let's try that again. It's just after 10. I've been on for just under an hour. I'll keep it open for a little while longer. If you got any last minute questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm out of questions that nobody has asked. I did have a bunch of other silly ones prepared, but oh yeah, Hack is saying that a used Nick Johnson is at least $1,000, so I'm way off on that. Yeah, I'm not getting one for $500 anytime soon. But Hack's flying. Take it easy, man. Thanks for tuning in. And yeah, like I said, I had some silly questions. Like, oh, what's your favorite ice cream? And what's your favorite video game? But none of that has anything to do with guitars and music. Although some video games have really great music, and I've never really paid attention to that before. And it's because I never really played a whole ton of video games before. So, anyway, hope I'm not developing a new hobbit there. So, habit, I should say, not a hobbit. Dwight's asking, what's my favorite speaker amplifier combo? Great question, Dwight. Just checking my arsenal right now. I don't know if it's my favorite, but right now I'm borrowing a Vox AC30 hand wired that's got Celestian blues in it, and I'm curious to try the greens. I know they come, stock, but yeah, I might consider. I'm just borrowing it, so it's not mine. So I'll ask my buddy if he's got any speakers left. If he still has the originals, or if these are stock in there. But they sound pretty bloody cool in an AC30. So, and John saying that Grand Theft Auto Vice City '80s soundtrack is awesome. Yeah, dude. When you're driving around and you can change the radio station, and oh man, it's really cool. It's really cool. Video games have come a long way since when I was growing up, brothers. So, all right, guys. Well, it's been a slice sharing this live stream with you. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Please keep playing guitar and keeping music alive, especially independent music. Um, Stay tuned for more wonderful content this year from Densco Music in 2026. More original music, more live videos, more videos themselves, and just more cool content. Really want to thank you all for joining in. Happy New Year's and much love and peace for everyone in 2026. All the best, folks, and take care. Have a great evening. Thanks for tuning in.